Hi. Hi, everybody. It is 7 o'clock on Wednesday, and I'm back again. How are y'all holding up today? We got a lot going on in the world, don't we? I'll wait a couple minutes for some folks to join in. And today I thought it was extremely important to talk about online predators and what is actually going on in the world today as it relates to the increased amount of activity, online predator activity, the amount of children that are being contacted and lured into conversations. Some have even gone as far as to meetings. And hey, Andre. And so today we're going to chop it up about that because I don't think we are really getting enough information and coverage as to how this has increased. And being that we are all somewhat social distancing and in somewhat of a lockdown, and our increased activity online, it's, all of us actually, being that we are separated, I think it's important that we definitely talk about it. I think it's super important. I care about my kids. I also care about the community's kids and everybody else's kids. And I wouldn't want this to happen to anybody. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hey, Angel, how are you? So we'll give it just a few more minutes. But I hope this information is helpful. I really do. And my hopes are that if you don't necessarily maybe think this is your thing and you have it down pat, great. Make sure you please share it with somebody, because I can guarantee you there's somebody on your list, your friends list, that may or may not have the information that I'm going to share. And so I'm going to also put links in this afterwards, because that'll give you time to look at it yourself and just kind of be like, okay, this is good, this isn't, or whatever the case may be. So I definitely wanted to make sure that I do this, and I'll, kind of share with you where it came from. So Saturday I was online and I was looking at some videos, and I have seen several groups that basically have created organizations where they volunteer their time and they go into chat rooms and, basically pose as a decoy. Now, some of y'all may or may not remember back in the day when Chris Hansen was on whatever show that was. And the show was called To Catch a Predator. And I'm laughing because it's not funny, but I remember him, having the whole camera set up, and then he would have like this 18, 19, 20-year-old person who had a very young look pose as a child. And so, y'all, it was doctors. It was all kinds of people, socioeconomic, race, whatever you may have it. Particularly men that would show up at a residence and knowing that they were going to meet a child. Okay. And so Chris Hansen would pop up around the corner, like, what are you doing here? And it went on for weeks on end. And I'm not sure what happened with the show, something legal or something like that, maybe entrapment. But the amount of activity, and that was, it had to be about at least 15 years ago. It had to be at least 15 years ago. So I wanted to kind of update us full circle, because that was back then before social media and internet activity is what it is today. So I said, we need to talk about it. So honestly, I was sick to my stomach, and this isn't to scare anybody. This is really to just provide information and awareness, because it could quite possibly change the way you look at the activity that your children or our kids are doing online, how much time they're spending, and if you see any activity or need to, look into the activity that takes place on their phones, on their gadgets, or whatever the case may be. So, we're going to get into it because we're now 6 minutes into it. So, glad you all are coming. Hopefully you'll share afterwards if you can't. I know other people have other things going on, but make sure you check it out or share it. So as of right now, since COVID has taken place, the authorities say there has been a 50% increase in predator activity. 50% increase. And during this time, they know that a lot of children are tethered to devices. And so from what they are speaking, there is what they call the dark web that it has increased their conversation about them preying on young children and teens. So this is not something like, oh, it's a TV, it's a CSI show or whatever. This is like for real deal. Like, this is going on. Like, people wake up every day, get a cup of coffee, and then decide how they're going to prey on children. Sad, but we're here today to talk about what it looks like, what age group, what apps, and what we can do about it. Okay. So basically, online predatory is when a person lures a child or a teen into a conversation and uses and tries to basically groom them, try to get pictures, exploit them sexually, have conversations and get them to send things to them, or worst case scenario, meet them. And it has gotten to that point more often than people believe. So the age group that is targeted is the prime time age, and they call that, hey, Dominique, hope you watching. Oh, you are. I say, hey. But the age group is anywhere from 12 to about 15 is the prime time age. Is the age 12, 15, 16 range where they're trying to have conversations and groom your children or your kids. And this is important because so here's the thing. I'm back when I was around 12, 15, because here's the thing. We adults have been their age before. So there's a certain amount of development and things that we know or we experience or has been explained to us or there has been examples set. So this is the age where they haven't met that development and it's a new time. The difference is we met at the mall and different things like that. Now it's so easy for someone with the idea that they're going to attack a child in the sense of exploiting them or prey on them to cast a web. Because before you had to drop the location and you could just, you had your pickings. But imagine with the World Wide Web, how many people they actually have access to, right? So during that time, most kids want to be, accepted, the self-discovery, and they want attention. I mean, I think that's about, our innate nature as human beings. So let's talk about what grooming is and the process of grooming. So grooming is to convince your children to trust them. They will exploit their insecurities. They will share that trusting information with them. They will try to relate with them based on a little conversation. And then at that point, they'll make a twist or a shift to start having a conversation that's going to go sexually. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes kids don't know what to say or what not to do at that particular point. If you've already had conversations with them, great. Don't stop having the conversations with them because some of them are very, very good. Some of them are real patient. Some of them will wait a while. Some of them aren't if they get turned down or rejected easily. But what they're essentially trying to do is lure your child into being able to share with them, trust them, and then take that avenue to get them to send them sexual pictures of some sort or worst case scenario, meet with them. And so it's really a shifting of the trust. And honestly, I'm going to say this. It's like a form of pimping children. Because, pimping, that's essentially what they're doing. So what they're essentially doing is trying to get the trust. And you do that with conversation. You imagine how bored, what people entertain when they're bored. That's grown folks. So imagine what a child will do. So they're going to make them feel safe, get them to trust them, try to get give feel for what they're willing to do and not do, and then they're going to exploit it. So that's basically the grooming process. The unfortunate thing is that there's different types of predators. So you have the predators who are looking to get your children to send them pictures, so then they can then take that content and distribute it. So they will take pictures, and if somebody sends it, and then they will distribute that content with other pedophiles on wherever they do this exchange at. What has happened is they call it sextortation. So basically, if your child or a teen provides them the information at some point, sends them a picture, okay, they will then try to say, well, if you don't send me some more, then I am going to shame you. I'm going to send it out. I'm going to, put you on blast. And so that may guilt them or shame them into continuing that activity. So just something to think about. Hey, Brian. So that's basically what the process of grooming is. It's going to be used to get leverage to continue to exploit the child, and at some point, also, worst case scenario, like I said, meet them. I was listening about a story where a child was abducted by some people. The child was in, I want to say, Michigan. They somehow got in contact with somebody in Bush, Florida. The child met these adults, got into a Prius, thinking he was going to have a much better life than he had there. They drove him all the way down to Bush, Florida. When he got to the house, he was on a mat in a garage somewhere with another 15-year-old with cages, pets, and feces. So much for that better life. And thank God one of those organizations were able to find him and also let that other child go. But this was like 4 or 5 adults, all males and 1 female. Also understand that this was actually a boy. Boys are also being preyed upon, but the young girls and young teens are the highest percentage of the online predatory behavior. So now we're going to talk about social media and the apps that we use to connect with one another, because it's not always just social media apps as much as it's just apps that allow us to be able to communicate. There are a number of apps. I'm going to name only a few, and not necessarily to say anything bad, but just kind of give you what the research is showing, and then you can do your own research. But there's a Discord app that's encrypted. The conversation is encrypted. Now, it was essentially set up for gamers to talk in an encrypted application, either in a group or online with each other while they're gaming. Obviously, a predator would get in there and, do a feel to see what he can actually identify, or she, we don't know. Mogo Space, Facebook, Tag, Kick, what's the other one? GroupMe. There's one called Whisper, and something called House Party. Now, let me make a shift real quick to something I think is important. And it's not really a shift, but I want to point this out. So a lot of these come with a disclaimer, and they have, it talks about, all the things about the app, but it also has an age appropriate, content. And you're supposed to check a box sometimes to say, I'm at this, I'm this age, or whatever the case may be. I strongly urge parents who are busy, who, let's just be honest, like you can give a child or a child, the app, the thing to watch videos or whatever the case may be, and they can stay on it for hours and they won't bug you unless they got, not bug you, but they may not need something or maybe, require your full attention as long as they have a device. So we must be careful of that, because that's what I refer to is like the digital babysitting, because it does serve its purpose. But the idea is that this information I'm giving and what we're talking about is that we are being preventative, and we are making sure we're staying on top of the content they're looking at and any other different things. Now, I'm old fashioned, so I'm just going to be honest with you. There's a certain amount of privacy that, all the kids have, but at a certain age, I truly feel like it's not your phone. You're just borrowing it, especially if we're paying the bill. So I will make sure I periodically ask questions and look for behavioral changes. And if I see something that I think is different about, your kids, then I'm going to periodically check and look and see what you have going on in your phone. I'm going to look at what app, did you download an app? What kind of things you're creating videos on, or whatever the case may be. And this is extremely important, because when you have children and you and the children's parents are no longer together, so they share between the households, make sure you are having a conversation with your child, maybe even having a conversation with the other parents so that you guys are on the same page, because you can't control what's in each other's household. But it's a good idea to set a precedent, or at least an understanding of what's the expectation, and if there isn't a need for them to be on apps that are not age appropriate, that y'all come to a general consensus. If it's one of those instances where you can't, just make sure that you're having regular conversations with your child, so that they at least have you in their ear. So that's just one thing to think about. So some of the functionality on these apps, first of all, if it's underage or if they're underage, they shouldn't be on it anyway. We know that they do, and so do predators. So they will be looking for children on these apps, displaying videos and conversations that indicate or show that they are by themselves or they don't have adult supervision. Okay, so with that said, be considerate of that. Some of the functionality that they have is called geolocation. So a lot of these apps, depending on the information that's put into the app and what settings is set during the application, once you install it, or as you're going through it, it's going to show your location. That's scary in and of itself. This is a side note. Some of y'all probably got caught up cheating with these geo stuff. So if you don't got caught up cheating as an adult, ain't no telling what these kids got. I'm just saying. Side note, no judgment, but I'm just saying, think about it. So some of these apps allow for you to be grouped by school. So if you just happen to put, oh, I'm in this school, but you didn't necessarily want to be grouped in the app because it's the way it's set up, you're already associated with attending a school in the area. So be mindful of that geolocation piece of it. Most of the apps allow direct messaging. So let me tell you how I feel about direct messaging. Hey, Thor. So imagine you grab your child. Let's just say it's your child. Would you allow a grown adult take your child into a room that you don't know, shut the door, and you can't see what's going on and you can't get in? That's what DMs are. That's what direct messages are. So think of it like that. You're not able to actually get in there, and that's what's going on. You wouldn't allow that in real life. Don't allow it online. So just something to kind of think about. Also, the other thing is there's apps that hide things. So there are apps, now we're getting into the teenage piece of it, just depending on, how savvy the children are. And most kids are more savvy than us adults on this stuff. There's apps that they can get, and they can download these apps, and then under those apps they can hide certain content in them, and you would need a password to access it. So it's going to be a decoy. It's going to look like maybe a calculator. There's one that's a calculator, but once you put in the code, it actually has information that's private that they don't want you to see if you go through their phone. So be mindful of the possibility that they may have advanced, and there's some content on there that they might be trying to hide, and if they're trying to hide it, then it's obviously a reason for it and something you definitely want to look into. So that's just that thought on that. So as parents, what are the things that we can do? Now, I've already discussed a little bit about how the apps are set up, what's the activity that's going on, the percentage that has increased. Some of the videos I looked at where, grown men were sending what they thought were teenage girls their private parts and begging them for pictures and then trying to get them to meet. Some actually did show up and nobody was there, but somebody was there to bust them. So imagine how scary it is. There was one person who showed up at the person's house. This guy's married and the child is obviously in the house, and you have like 3 adults in this house, and this child is on their phone, a 15-year-old girl having chats with grown people under their roof, and they have no idea. All right. Now, we're not going to be able to know what a child is doing 100% of the time or keep them safe 100% of the time. But it is the sole responsibility of the caretaker, the guardian, or the parent to make sure that if we're going to give them access to a device, a phone, a tablet, whatever the case may be, that we are doing what we can do in our best interest to be educated and be proactive. And this is where prevention and awareness comes in, because it actually will save lives. So a few things is to make sure with all the amount of time that, that our children are using on devices. We see it everywhere we go. There ain't no judgment about that. As an adult, I can spend hours on my phone if I'm not mindful of trying to do other things. Maybe say to your cat, okay, you're going to go and do this for a while. You're going to get off that and do this for a while. They're not going to like it, but at least monitor the screen time and how much they're using the device. Just something to think about. So some things that we should know or consider as parents or caretakers, or the guardians, aunties, uncles, all of that. Can apps send private messages? That's huge, because a lot of the conversation is going to take place in the private messaging. Obviously, there's also a way to delete that information, but depending on what apps you use, you may be able to still obtain it. But make sure that you, as you're looking at your children's information or asking what they're on, consider whether or not it can send private messaging. Also, the location identification services, like I mentioned, like the geolocation. That's huge, because a lot of the meetings that have been taking place has been because of the app that allows you to see their location. And I'll get into something else on the end of this. Can the app send video or picture messaging? So aside from what is sent, put publicly on social media, can there be a video that can be sent privately, or a picture that can be sent privately? That's huge, because that's where a lot of the content is also that maybe they wouldn't want to put out publicly, like the app Whisper. Whisper allows you to, what you wouldn't normally put on a social media platform, you could do on the back end of the platform, and that's in the app, which is very scary. That is where some of the predators or people who are looking to distribute or publish is actually getting the information and basically sharing it in the pedophile ring. And just so you know, there's a lot of people getting in trouble with sharing that content. So if you airdrop it, that's essentially you could, and it's an underage child, you can absolutely be in trouble for sharing and distributing that content. So be mindful of that. Does the app hide content? That's huge. And you can just Google this stuff and find it out. If you're not sure, if you don't think they're telling you the truth, just Google it so you'll at least know. And does the app allow for live video streaming? So essentially a form of FaceTime or live face-to-face videoing, because it has been times where, like with my youngest daughter, I can hear her having a conversation on FaceTime, and I'm always like, who is that? Because I want to make sure that I know who she is calling and then who is calling her. It's always her cousin or aunts or something like that, her godmom. But nonetheless, make sure that if you hear that type of activity, you want to know who they are talking to, but essentially at a certain age and different things like that, if it does have the capability for live streaming, make sure that you are aware of that and who they're having conversations with. And so there are apps that are available that will allow for a parent to monitor their child's activity on a device. I haven't been able to find anything that is free. It does cost, but I don't know that you can put a price on peace of mind depending on your level of involvement with your child and what your work life is like, what your schedule takes, what's going on with your schedule, how much you're able to be hands-on, because this is just the time we're living in, and there's a lot going on, and things are changing pretty rapidly. So if that's your thing, definitely do some research on it. There are apps that are available as the parent that you can identify, and those apps allow for you to check screen, like the amount of screen time they're on, their history and searches. Some of them are allow you to map a geo. They call it geo. I can't think of it right now, but what it essentially is it allows you to map out the perimeter of a map on where they can go, and if they're outside of that, and if in fact they are with their device, you will get some kind of notification. So that's out there and that's available. And that was essentially, all I really wanted to talk about today. Hopefully I didn't go through that too fast. I don't see any questions. I was really hoping that this topic would have more questions, but nonetheless, I'm going to put this information in the link. I guess it's really not much question to ask. It's just information. You kind of be like, what? Let me go and do this. Let me know. I don't know. But definitely, if you have kids at your house over the summer, or your kids go somewhere else at somebody else's house, if they're in your care and they're over at your house, and make sure you question them other kids, because that's the kind of parent I am. You're not going to just drop your child off and they just going to be off doing whatever the heck they want to on their device. But just be mindful of that. And with your kids, if you get your kids every other weekend and things like that, just make sure you're monitoring and asking questions. Once they're grown, if you continue to pour into them and lay the foundation and say the same messaging, they'll remember it. They will. And there's one more thing I want to tell you about before I go. If, as a parent, I've heard and I've seen people say, me and my child have a great relationship, which I'm all for. And they tell me everything. No, they don't. They don't tell you everything. Even if you think they do. The chances are they don't. Now, this isn't to say you don't have a great relationship. This isn't to say you're lying. If you say it, I believe you. But this is what I'd like to advocate for you. Give your child somebody else outside of yourself, the mother and the father, that they can talk to in the event they feel like they can't talk to you. And this is so important because a lot of the times the kids are like, I know my mom. I don't know. They might trip or they might say this or they done told me this before, and it's possible. But if they have that person that you say, if ever, you're in any trouble and you can't reach me, or you think, or you need somebody to talk to and you're scared to say something to me, call your aunt or call grandma or call this particular person, because that person is going to be a little bit outside of the situation. And then what that does is it kind of gives the child or the teen a buffer so that they can share it with somebody, as opposed to going to people their age, because they don't know no more than they do. And a lot of the times children or young adults won't say anything to their immediate parents because of the fear, even if it's not real, if it's perceived, that's a possibility. So what I'm saying to you is I'm hoping that you have somebody else for them to contact, and then that person you trust will somehow intervene or at least get that information to you, and you have to decide whether or not, there's confidentiality at that point. So I would say make sure it's somebody that you trust, who is going to love your child and give them the best information, the best way out, the best guidance, wisdom, and so that they're not getting that from somebody else, and then you have somebody that would advocate for your child just like that, like it was your child. So that's just a little thought. That's it. So hopefully I'm going to put the information in there. Hopefully that's helpful. Again, please make sure you share it, because this 50% increase of predatory activity, with us being stretched thin, all kinds of things going on in the world. People are having to work. Some of us are not. Some of us are on Zoom calls all day. Some of us just need a break. It's like, here, go get on that pad and stop talking to me and just give me a couple of minutes. I mean, whatever. No judgment. This is just an avenue for prevention, awareness, and something to help you. And let's just all kind of work together on that. Your kids are my kids. That's how I feel. Hope this is helpful. Y'all have a good. Today is Haviland, my sweet Haviland's last day before she goes back to school, and I just want to let y'all know she is she's just amazing. She's just dope. I know she's mine, but she helps me every week with this setup, testing, the lighting, the whole nine. So I just want y'all to, give Haviland a good shout out, send off to college. She's going back to school as a junior in criminal justice. Don't ask me why. We'll get into that one day. But I think she's pretty dope, and I just want to say thank you, Haviland. And we're going to pass the torch on to your sister. All right, y'all. Peace out.